Oh, Jesus.
Let's see if that's better.
It's good enough.
Okay.
We're mainly interested in the audio anyways.
Okay. Are we gonna do we do a YouTube-y type thing of it, or is it just pretty much vocal?
Eventually, right now
Okay.
we're doing just strictly like we go through Anchor and it goes to Spotify and a whole bunch of other audio podcasts.
Okay.
Eventually we'd like to release them on YouTube, but we haven't got that far yet. So
Yeah, no, and that's a whole other level of production.
yeah, exactly. So we're recording the video for possible use later. We just haven't got there yet.
Just check it.
Sure.
We are recording.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We are recording.
You only make that mistake a few times.
We went through an entire interview and realized that we hadn't hit the record button.
Oh man.
Yeah.
You know that there's so many people that are able to learn how to do this medium, you know, but I've seen so many people just go through, they have to learn it. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and I certainly don't have the time to try to figure out how to produce like that. It's
and
that's
where like for us, the audio has always been is we're traveling actually quite a bit. We're always in the car here and there. So most of the stuff that we ever get a chance to listen to, regardless of whether they have video content or not, it's almost always audio. You know, so we just kind of figure at that point, because the video stuff definitely seems to be the part that takes us a little bit.
Yeah, we tease that we're black belts in jiu-jitsu, but we're a 2-stripe white belt in podcasting.
Yeah, we were a 3-stripe. We lost
you get
one.
Downgraded
when we lost that one whole interview.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That was a good one too. It was Hanette Stack, like multiple world champion. I was so bummed.
Oh, that's awful. Yeah, that's super disappointing.
So why don't we start off with you introducing yourself and introducing the organization? Okay.
My name's TJ Kreitzer. I'm the Vice President and Director of Operations of We Defy Foundation. Just a little bit about the organization. Now I'll go to me and then come back more in depth with the organization. But we sponsor disabled vets to train jiu-jitsu for a year as a way to build a tool set to cope with their service-connected disabilities. I'm a veteran. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. Spent my whole life there until the day after I turned 18. Then I went to the Air Force Academy and went from there to pilot training, flew fighters, F-16s, and then was an instructor pilot in the T-38 for a long time. Joined the reserves and continued to do that job. Got involved with the Air Force Academy as a liaison officer, so helping high school kids prep and then apply and maybe be approved to go there. And eventually in 2019 retired from the Air Force. So halfway through that Air Force career, there was a transition from active duty to the reserves. And when I started the reserves in 2010, I started to have a little more free time on my hands. So we moved to where we live now in Minnesota. And, if you could pick up the O in the Minnesota, but I've been here 10 years, so it's happened. The accents come. So I got involved in some MMA conditioning at a local Lifetime Fitness, just, pad drills and footwork and stand-up stuff, no sparring. But I got more and more interested in that side of it and decided not to go with the striking sparring due to my career and the concussion risk and things like that. So instead, the coaches talked me into trying jiu-jitsu, which at the time I was not really interested in because I thought it looked horrible. But they're like, dude, you're gonna love it. Like we know you and we know how competitive you are, and like you're gonna just dive right in. So when I finally did, I was like, yeah, you're right. This is absolutely fantastic. And right away I was hooked after they finally got me to do it. So I started training, and then I got more involved in the gym I was at, and started traveling for work, but I would throw a gi in my bag so I could get mat time on the road. And I was in Chicago and met a veteran who was just back from Iraq. He'd been back a couple months and was struggling with some medical issues and family challenges and financial challenges. And we talked for like an hour and a half. And I have a background in psychology from the Air Force Academy, so I got my degree in. And I've always been interested in trauma therapy, and I've kind of stayed layman level current on issues in counseling and things like that. So when we talked afterwards, we talked for like an hour, and he said, I really think you may have something to offer people, because that was a really helpful discussion. And some of the things you framed for me are things no one has really ever said, even some of the therapists I've tried to use. A little sidebar to that is, there's therapy. The VA offers awesome medical care at a lot of facilities. Veterans a lot of times have a difficult time with the therapy part of it, the psychology therapy part of it, or the cognitive therapy. And just anecdotally speaking, because I know a lot of people in the field, if you're a veteran, they find it much easier to talk to you. So I have several psychologist veteran friends that have said, yeah, once they find out that they're a veteran, their whole demeanor changes. There's this immediate trust, this immediate bond where they can now start, this person's going to understand me and understand what my struggles are. So that may have been a component of what was actually happening when we were talking. But he did kind of inspire me to find something to do on a volunteer basis. And about 6 months or maybe 9 months later, there was a seminar done up here in Minnesota by a group called Twin Cities Invitational. I believe it was their first event, and they brought in the board for We Defy to be a beneficiary of this event. And Tom DeBlas was here to teach, and Chris Howder was here to teach, and then there were a bunch of super fights afterwards. And that's where I found out about Mission 22 and We Defy. And I took a look at both organizations because I thought, okay, these are things that I think I would like to be involved in. And I gravitated towards We Defy because it was just jujitsu.
Right.
Mission 22 does a lot of different things. And I really thought, okay, this is completely, it's all about the jujitsu part. So I think I want to focus on that. And We Defy was a lot smaller at the time, and they didn't even have an ambassador team yet. I think there were probably 7 people at the time that were running the whole thing out of a gym in McKinney, Texas. At the time it was called Tier 1 Training Facility. And since I'm an airline pilot, I can travel anywhere for free. So a couple weeks later said to my wife and son, hey, we're going to go to Dallas for a vacation to visit my best friend from high school who had moved there. But another big reason I was going to go, because I was going to walk into the gym and say, I want to volunteer for you guys, and you can't, I'm not leaving until you say, here's how you can help us.
Right. Nice.
And I didn't know that they didn't have a ambassador team yet, or a volunteer team, but they were just starting to stand one up. So I talked to Keely, who is she's the office manager there, but she's also our athlete coordinator. And she said, well, there's a person on the board named Gina Franson, who is standing up.
Gina.
Do you know Gina?
Yeah.
So she's standing up the ambassador team. I'm like, Gina Franson from Minnesota, Gina Franson?
Right.
And she's like, yeah, like, oh, well, I hadn't met her yet, but like, oh, I know exactly who that is. So I didn't realize that she was on the board at the time. And then that's kind of how I got involved with the organization. I was the first Midwest regional ambassador with the first 17 of us that were pulled on. And then because of my employment, I have a lot of free time. So I was able to flexibly use my free time to get more involved in the organization until I just kept being able to take on new roles until I got to be the vice president. The organization looks to partner with gyms that we think are going to be a good fit for a veteran that we can then place there and pay for their scholarship for a year. The idea is to give, like I said, the veteran a tool set in terms of, physical fitness, community, some structure, and I think human touch too it's a unique part of jiu-jitsu that is really important. And I kind of frame this that when you combine all these things and you get a person doing it consistently, it allows for another factor, which is achievement. And that achievement, I think, is the key point to helping or using jiu-jitsu as a tool to recovery or to improve mental health. So the foundation is really based on that. It's a simple concept, and the model is we're busy because we have a lot of organizations like gyms that we're partnered with. We have a lot of people we're sponsoring, but we don't do a lot of different kinds of things. we're trying to do one thing and we're trying to do it really, really well. And that's
Right.
put veterans in gyms and then support them.
Right.
So that's kind of, that's my long story background to me and what the program's currently doing.
Right. Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree when you were talking earlier about sometimes people feeling hesitant to open up in discussion. Like you were saying, they feel a kinship and a brotherhood when they're talking with another veteran. You hear the same thing in law enforcement, where, about that once they get to a certain point, once they've been working in the job, they start to almost feel like they can only speak candidly to other law enforcement officers because they just don't think other people can relate to what they're experiencing. And that's one of those things that I've always found with, I've been a lifelong martial artist. I started in 78 doing Taekwondo and then transitioned into traditional Okinawan karate, and jiu-jitsu was different. It was very different. I trained with people for years that I didn't feel I was bonded to as much as 6 months into jiu-jitsu, because like you said, that physical interaction, so I always found for myself, I at first I struggled with it, but I mean, now I'm a little bit more open about historically having bouts of depression and anxiety and things of that nature. And I found about 20 plus years ago what and how jiu-jitsu helped me in those regards. It was way different than going to the gym and banging weights or, doing a heavy workout, or sparring or things of that nature. That jiu-jitsu, there was something different. It's like jiu-jitsu hits on so many different levels, that the way I've always described it was in those moments, while I'm training, the inner voices just disappear, the doubt, the whatever, because it's a singular task, and then after you're done, it's different. Being around that group, you feel more bonded to this new group that you just struggled with, where you just had something. It was different than having them punch you in your face. I mean, I've had a lot of people punch me in the face. I don't feel very bonded to them.
Well, you hit on a lot of really awesome concepts in there that I like to talk about when I do present to groups, or when sometimes I write, for whatever the medium is. I think one thing that you see in law enforcement a lot, I think we see it in the military especially, and these are my words, these are my thoughts. This isn't stuff that I know of that's been researched. It's just the way that I've kind of framed my observations. I think people come back from especially careers where there is a trauma component potentially to it, with a trust deficit. And I think about in the military where, especially for folks who had to deploy to Afghanistan and Iraq in a counterinsurgency, urban warfare scenario where, there could be a kid advancing with a weapon of some kind, and you tell them to stop and they don't stop. Well, the only way to make that stop is to do something that's potentially catastrophic, I use that example because I think it's kind of visceral when we talk about a kid, but it doesn't have to be a kid. It can be anybody on the street, that's in this scenario that you're dealing with. And I think in those environments, and you can extrapolate not too farly from that, from some scenarios in law enforcement too, where the people that you trust are your coworkers or your peers, or the people you're deployed with, or the people in your unit, they're the people in your squadron. And like you said, you learn to rely on those people at the expense of other relationships, or you start to have a discomfort or distrust with other people. And I think jiu-jitsu, by nature of the fact that you're sparring every practice, it helps to rebuild that trust deficit you have in other people. And you start to realize that everybody has a story. Everybody's dealing with something. When you struggle with them, you use that word struggling with them, on the mats. When you struggle with them, the things that make you different go away. And the things that make you the same or similar, the things that you can co-relate to, become much more important. That's how that bond between teammates gets built. And I think that that's unique about jiu-jitsu. CrossFit's a great activity. And you can go mountain biking. In fact, I was just talking to someone a few days ago who said that they got into biking first as part of their own therapy after military service. And then they thought, man, this is it. This is the thing. And then they started jujitsu. Like, no, that's the thing.
Right.
Because there's that added component. And I think it's that. I think a lot of it's touch. And then it's the other piece of that would be that mat struggle, that sparring.
Yeah.
I had one veteran, at least one, I think two now have said this, that when I tap, the person stops.
Yeah.
I think about that scenario that I gave you with a kid or with someone else in an urban combat scenario where you can't stop the attack without destroying their ability to do so. That's the only way to stop the advance. In jiu-jitsu, when you've had enough, you tap, and the other person respects that.
Right.
And that builds trust. And we also sponsor not just combat veterans, but we have a carve out for victims of military sexual trauma. And I think about how that's those scenarios pair with utilizing jujitsu as a trust building activity. And
Well, I think it gives a little bit of control back to that person as well. You know,
yes.
when they felt that lack of control, and now they have this avenue where they are in control, even if they're getting their ass kicked, they have the ability at any point to stop it.
So that's what some of the veterans have said, that I feel like I'm in control. There's a sense of control, and even with jiu-jitsu itself, you have a class structure, you have belts, you have structure that makes sense. You know, if your whole life is falling apart, you still know every Tuesday at 5:30.
Right.
You have jiu-jitsu, and all those little things add up to a renewed sense of control. And when you start to have that in a certain area of your life, I think there are benefits that start to, you pull in other parts of your life where you start to regain that ability to have some sense of control. And jiu-jitsu can be, for some people, I think, that anchor. The other thing that I think is really interesting that you said, you talked about inner voices. And as a person who really likes psychology and has done some looking at anxiety and depression, familiar with the term rumination?
No.
Rumination is kind of it's like a more of a clinical type term for a mental process that we go through when your brain always comes back to the same problem over and over. You wake up and you go to bed at night stressed out, you wake up, the first couple minutes you feel fine until your brain finds its way to that one thing.
Right.
That's called ruminating. And ruminating is actually a problem solving thought loop that you go through. And most of the time we are able to find some sort of solution to a problem or get far enough that we're satisfied with it. But when we're dealing with anxiety and depression, one of the things that's happening cognitively is we are unable to solve a particular set of problems. And we keep coming back to it. Well, the body is built to avoid or defeat threats with the fight or flight system, the fight, flight, or freeze system. So this rumination loop and these voices, these thoughts, these words in your head, they create a biofeedback issue where now you've got cortisol and other bad hormones running around your body because you're in this anxiety-filled state. Well, the ways we deal with that are through fitness, one way. Working out helps to reset the physiological component of what's going on. It's utilizing those endorphins, not the right word, but those chemicals in your body that are put there so that you can beat up the saber-toothed tiger if it's attacking your baby. Well, these inner voices and thoughts, there's no saber-toothed tiger. It's just the voices. We're not equipped to deal with that. So physical fitness can assist. But the way I think about what's happening in jiu-jitsu is there's a hierarchy of concepts that we have to deal with. What's the first most basic need and thing that everybody has? A need to do what?
To be safe.
Survive. It's survive.
Yeah.
That's live.
Yeah.
It's survive. And everything, we're hardwired for that to be the number one thing that we're trying to do all the time. When you're doing jiu-jitsu, I haven't looked, I don't know if this is scientifically been studied, but I think something that's going on there is you're so focused on not trying to get killed that all those voices fall to the side. And the only thing you're thinking about, your brain is hardwired to make this activity that you're engaged in the number one priority right now. And we're safe, right? We're not going to actually intentionally harm someone. But I still think what's happening is the body and the mind are prioritizing this thing that's occurring right now because it's a perceived threat. That stops these inner voices. It breaks up that rumination loop. Once it's done that, or while it's doing that, you've got all the positive endorphins and the positive chemicals that are coming out through the body from fitness, from bonding, from touch. And it breaks up that loop. When you get in the practice of breaking up that loop over and over and over, it becomes a therapeutic activity because it's stopping the bad stuff from happening and allowing you to create good things. And I think that can help get people over that hump, or it's part of a complementary activity to therapy, to other types of therapy that when used together can help you get over those challenges.
Right.
And
that's
I
something,
think that's an awesome thing that jiu-jitsu does.
yeah, and that's something, like I said, that I found, at least within the martial arts itself, that I found personally was unique for jiu-jitsu, because I've done Taekwondo, Okinawan Goju Karate, I've done Aikido, I've dabbled in just about everything under the sun. But once I started jiu-jitsu, that's where I found it to be just very different. Because the others were good. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I love working out. I love lifting weights, things of that nature. But the one part I loved in jiu-jitsu was the way I've always described it. I mean, it's for lack of a better term, it was like reaching a Zen point where in that moment, the only thing that truly mattered, like you were saying, with survival was me and whatever struggle I was dealing with in that physical moment, keeping them from passing my guard, preventing them from choking me, whatever it was. But I always found it to be a much more visceral, full body, mind, everything engaged. Whereas I found in the striking arts, when I got into hard sparring rounds and the like, I didn't feel the mental engagement as much. I mean, I know it's there, but I always found the problem-solving aspect of jiu-jitsu to be a lot more connective within there, because you could literally look at something and afterwards analyze it on the way home, which I did a lot. I had an hour drive home after training with no radio in the car, so I was left in my thoughts. But that connection stayed, though, that my benefits were not just in the time I was on the mat. It was for hours afterwards, when I was able to think about, what matches I had, how I could address them differently. And that was the other fun part that I also enjoyed. I thought was very different with jiu-jitsu, is that part of that bonding aspect is in a lot of instances, and it's something we really push here, is after you struggle with somebody, of having partners give feedback to each other about things that, hey, this was a really good portion through here, but if you would dig your right hand to an underhook, you could have stopped me from, and they give each other that feedback, not just smashing into each other and then moving on to the next partner, but giving each other part of that problem solving, aspect of it to help push each other forward, even at cost of self. Of saying that by me helping you may get me next time. I may not.
Yeah.
I may not be on the winning side.
Yeah. I think one cool thing about jiu-jitsu too, and this is hard when you're a white belt, and I think even as a blue belt, it can be pretty difficult. But as you get purple, brown, black, you get more of an ability to change your speed and your intent with training. So you're not just going at it for like bonkers. You can ask your partner, like, what do you want out of this role today? Like, are we comp training? Do you want to flow? Do you want to go about 50-ish%? Because is there a drill you want to do? Do you want to be really technical, or do you want to just hammer it? And
Right.
I think that's and sometimes you have that conversation with words, and sometimes you have it with feel.
Yeah.
And you can tell, like, you can come in hot and feel how the person an experienced person responds, and okay, that's not what they want this role to be. So I'm going to accommodate, even if you wanted something or expecting something a little different. There is that partnership that you're building with this person, that where you're looking out for their needs, for their training desires, as well as your own. And that's a really cool thing. I think that as you get more experience in jiu-jitsu, you gain that ability. It's kind of that self-awareness, and then that partner awareness too, to know, hey, are they appreciating what you're bringing, or is what you're bringing not what they want? And then adjusting yourself to act appropriately.
Right.
I think that's a really unique thing. And I think it's because there's so much contact. I mean, it's 5 minutes or 6 minutes of smash or, physical contact where I close my eyes all the time when I roll now.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it even causes a problem for me because I won't see something over here, because I don't do it on purpose, but it's especially true when I'm just flowing, or if I brought the speed a little bit, I notice that my eyes close because I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because it's not intentional. It just happens.
Yeah.
Right.
You're relying so much on these other senses.
Well, we actually do drills periodically where we'll make sure everybody's spread out. If we have enough room, I'll get both people to deliberately close their eyes while other people are their eyes for them, to make sure that if they get close to another group or a wall or something of that nature, or I'll deliberately have one person close their eyes so that the other person, so I'll tell them, if your eyes are open, you're going about 50%, but you're the safety. You're the one that to direct this match as it goes, so that the other person can feel safe in their movement and everything else, knowing that you're going to be giving them pressure, but with their eyes closed, you're not just going to try to kill them. But the person with their eyes closed can feel a little bit more free to move. And then we'll switch roles, periodically, because that tactile feeling with the eyes closed, there's a lot of communication that's taking place, without needing to hear or see. You can feel intent within people based on body tensions, things of that nature. You can actually discern a lot of information, with that. And we tell people that eventually you start to see people, even when their eyes are open, watch them. They're not really looking. Their eyes are open, but you can tell they're using other senses in the role. They're relying on that feel way more than they're relying on their eyes.
Yeah, it's a really interesting and cool thing that occurs, and I think that's something that we're wired for. That is touch. And you think about when you touch your kid's hand. Like my kid's 8. I'm gonna hold his hand until he makes me stop. I don't care how old he is. You know what I mean? If he lets me hold his hand till 40, I'm doing it. I don't care.
Yeah.
And that's something we're denied, especially in Western culture, where stuff is weird. And there's obviously times where that's not appropriate, but there's also times when it's probably okay, but we make it weird.
Yeah.
Or culture has decided it's weird. But we're really hardwired for it. And I think that's one of the things that comes out in jiu-jitsu. It's so powerful. That's one of the reasons why those inner voices go away. It's such a powerful thing that we're hardwired and built to accept. And this is one of the few places where we can get a really high dosage of it in an appropriate manner.
Well, and it's one of those where you see, that hugging in jiu-jitsu in a non-grappling match aspect is very common.
Yeah.
Way more common, I think, than any other sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and not just in the training environment. If those same members see each other outside of the training environment,
like going to Master Worlds, it's a massive hug fest.
Yeah,
everybody's hugging everybody.
Well, and the touches linger.
Yeah.
It's different than, like, you think a neighbor who's a friend, and you quick hug, couple taps, like pat on the shoulder, and then you break. These are different, because of the comfort level you have with these people.
Yeah. Right.
It is absolutely different. And I think it's a really important thing for connecting with other people.
Right. And it's also interesting is you travel. So you've also seen what it's like. You said you pack your gi and you go to a new city. You don't know anyone, but you do a little research, you find a school. And for the most part, walking into even a new gym, there's a sense of belonging, even in that environment. Every once in a while, it gets a little weird, but 90% of the time when you travel and you're a guest walking in, it's usually at that point a really positive experience.
Yeah.
Even with a group of people you never know, because the art or the sport or the whatever is creating that new brotherhood or sisterhood or new bond, that just simply, like I said, even going to a new city, that's one of the things I've always loved. I've loved being able to travel, go to a new place, even training in places where we don't even speak the same language.
Yeah, that's gotta be awesome. I haven't gotten to do that yet. That's
the
gotta
art
be awesome.
is our way of communicating.
We used to go to Mexico every year for vacation a long time ago, and
Okay.
he was a blue belt at the time doing jiu-jitsu, and he found a judo school, and they spoke zero English.
I spoke very little Spanish and
a tiny bit of Japanese.
Jiu-jitsu and judo are, I mean, I came from that Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so we weren't speaking, the Japanese lingo for each. Now, granted, I was coming also from a Okinawan karate background, so I have a little bit of Japanese, but not much. So we were creating this language through a lot of motion, physicality, and the blending of all the different languages that we knew. And by the end, it was I trained with them for about 5 days.
Wow.
And I mean, day one was awkward, but through the art, that was our bond. And by the time we were done, I mean, it was like we were speaking, to each other fairly decently, even though, I mean, to somebody else, they probably couldn't understand anything that was going on.
Sure.
But had an amazing experience with them. That, I mean, I still talk about, this is probably 20 years now since that's taken place, and it's still one of my absolute favorite memories.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I haven't gotten to do that. I'm not in a foreign country yet.
It was different because the first time I was thrown on the very, very first class, I got there early because I didn't know. And so first there was like 2 or 3 kids classes that went first, and none of them left. And so by the time the adult class is going, it's a room full of kids, and they were all dying laughing when I was thrown, for the first time.
They all wanted to watch the American get their ass kicked.
So I just heard the giggles, but I mean, again, I went in with the open mind and open intent, and no ego, that this is their house. And I went in just to have a great time learning an art that I didn't know. And when my feet went over my head and I heard all the kids, I mean, literally as soon as I landed,
loving it.
And the smile that came over my face. I mean, at that moment, I was sitting there looking at him going, I get it. That was, that was fun. I mean,
it's funny. When I visit other places, I think it's a good idea to, when you go in there, just remember you're not there to win worlds that day.
Exactly.
And it is that feel out the partners. What do they want? And you're the guest, and you're not there to prove everybody how good the jiu-jitsu in Minnesota is.
Yeah.
It should be about sharing and fellowship and having fun, and you're meeting people too. I mean, it should be that introduction, and then you get to do this thing that you love. And they can be hard roles, but there's definitely, I think as a visitor, it's on you to be especially respectful of the people you're training with, because you don't know each other's styles. You don't know, you don't know what the rules are, because you start talking about like more advanced stuff like leg locks, and with how prevalent they're becoming in different gyms and different affiliations, that stuff, there's stuff I keep in my bag, not because I'm trying to hide it. It's because I want to make sure that I'm behaving in a way that's acceptable
Right.
in that room. That's on me to figure out,
Yeah.
and that can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes because you don't always know exactly what the rule set's going to be.
Right.
So the best way I think to go in there is to go in there, have fun, and try to be a learner and not a champion. And if you can do that, you're going to have an awesome time at almost every place you go visit.
Yeah. And get the invites to come back.
And get the couple. yeah, that's key. But it's fun too because now that we have we've got over 400 gyms now throughout the country, so a lot of times I'll look first to see if there's a We Defy affiliated gym that I can go to, just because there's so many people now that we interact with. It's so nice to be able to put a name with a face.
Yeah.
Instead of just an email.
Yeah.
Because that's the most efficient way, is to correspond digitally with most folks. But with all the ambassadors and all the volunteers that we have, and we mentor to the athletes as well. So we have a little program where we put them in the gym, but then we have a volunteer that checks up on them. And once in a while I'll get an email like, hey, Mike has this issue. What do we do about it? I'm like, well, I need to know Mike who, and I need to know what gym they're at, because I've got 14 Mikes now.
Right.
So it's that's an interesting challenge with how much bandwidth do you have, and how many contacts can you have and still build relationships with them?
Right.
And then at what point do you need to start delegating to other people in the organization those relationships, because they need to manage them and nurture them too. And you need to make sure that when you delegate a relationship like that, the person who is going to do it is capable as well. So that's an interesting challenge that we've had as we've grown, because we've expanded so quickly. In 2019, right before COVID, we were putting 5 veterans in a month. And last month we put in 50.
Nice.
And we usually do 20. That's our baseline funding right now. The 50 was what we were able to do because of a VA grant that has a certain time span and chunk of money that we're able to use. So we can kind of open the floodgates as we need to. But still, to go from 5 in 2019 to get through COVID and then have 20 a month that we're capable of doing now consistently is pretty awesome. Because when COVID started, just like everybody else, we were like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Is this organization going to exist in 6 months?
Yeah. We were puckering hard.
Yeah. I mean, everybody
like,
was, God. I mean, we had gyms closing.
Yeah.
People, athletes that were off the mats. And what's one of the things that's really exciting about being part of a growing organization is you sometimes are given opportunities, and when you recognize it, you can run with it and make something super awesome happen. And you never even thought about it before. So when COVID started, we decided as a board, we're going to try to pay the gyms that close continuously up until that year point when the scholarship would have ended. It's like we have funding. If we have the funding, let's keep paying. And then we'll just ask them at the end of the year, funding wise, if the person missed 6 months, if they would tack that on so they can train.
Right. Yeah.
So that there's a year of funding, there's a year of training, and however that meshes together is fine.
Right.
But I couldn't track it all myself. So that's when we started this team. I called it the engagement team. And the whole function was, need you 5 volunteers to contact these athletes to make sure they're training. And if they're not, we need you to keep track of when they're on the mats, when they're not. So it's meant to be an administrative function. We started seeing that immediately the volunteers and the athletes were bonding. And pretty quick, we're like, whoa, this is the whole other thing that's happening here. We can use this. So now we have about 40 mentors for over 200 current scholarship athletes. And we just started using WhatsApp for like one person, if he has 5 mentors, he puts them all together in a WhatsApp chat. So now they all get to meet each other and they get to support each other, talk about injuries and technique and what's it like and the struggles and all those things. So the intent was at first to put a student in a gym and have that be their community.
Right.
But now we build another layer around it.
Right.
And it happened by accident.
Right.
Well, it was kind of interesting the way we got connected with We Defy with you guys was one of our members. He started out as just a dad of a student, and now he just started training. And he started talking to the other vets in our gym. And he's a disabled vet and all of that. And he had been, you know, like when we go to fights, he does vet ticks or whatever. And he gathers all the vets together and takes them to the fights and stuff. And he came to us and he's like, hey, listen, I found this organization. We got a lot of vets in here. This would be really good for everybody. He goes, I want to be he wanted to be a ambassador. He's like, I want you guys to try. And we're like, hey, absolutely. You know, it fits our culture. It's perfect. So yeah, so it was kind of interesting. He like rallied all the troops and
that's great.
And everything.
Yeah, you know, we've grown so much. We have about 100 active ambassadors. Sometimes, you know, people come in, they volunteer for a certain amount of time, then life gets in the way. And so the ambassadors definitely, some stick around for quite a while. Some show up and help us for a little while, and then they need to move on. That's fine. Almost the entire organization is volunteer. We have 3 contractors right now that we pay for professional services, and then we have 1 advisory group that helps us with regulatory stuff, because every state has its own regulations that you have to comply with, and there's no way we could do that without spending some money on someone to help us with that. But everybody else is the board's all volunteers. I'm logging my time now. It's usually between 10 to 15 hours a week running daily operations as a volunteer. I mean, that's a lot of video game time. You know, that's a lot of zombies that didn't get killed that week, you know. So, but I'm spending my time doing this and then training, and then with my regular career, it all just fits together really, really awesome, because I can travel when I need to, I can train on the road, and then I have this flexible time where I don't have an office job. You know, I can do all kinds of awesome stuff. So I'm really fortunate that I can do that. And every airline pilot I know has some kind of hobby.
Yeah.
And well, I love that the one I got involved in is it's based on the idea of trying to make somebody else's life just a little better.
Yeah.
And that means so much more to me than a couple years ago when I was, you know, blowing stuff up on the TV all the time. Because I hadn't found it yet. I hadn't found the thing yet.
Not the thing. Oh, gotcha. So as far as who qualifies for We Defy scholarships, how they go about applying, if you can kind of give a little rundown on that.
Sure. So you have to be a disabled combat veteran. So that basically just means someone who served in a combat zone at some point, and they have an 80% VA rating or disability rating from the VA. And you have to have an honorable discharge on a DD-214. So that could be an active duty troop. After they leave, they get this, you know, they get this DD-214 that states that the condition of their service when they left. And it could also be National Guard and Reserve. So we have some folks that are still in the reserves that are also We Defy athletes, because they did a deployment. And when you're on a deployment, you're considered active, basically. You're activated by certain orders. And a lot of times when you are released from that, you get a DD-214 for the time you were active, and you can file for VA disability if you incurred injuries during that time. So those are the conditions, and most of the people we have this is after service, but there are a few who are still serving one way or another, but they have those other qualifications. We also have a waiver that's usually used for stuff like I said, military sexual trauma, because that's a group of disability related conditions, or those events can contribute to those that we feel like jiu-jitsu is potentially really well suited to assist recovery from. Absolutely. So we want that carve out because we think we can do that. And then occasionally, you know, there's another case by case thing where that's why we have a waiver, where we can take a look and see, hey, how high is the need for this individual? So high. The board decides on those. We don't have a particular criteria. We just look at a case and say, yes, this makes sense, or no, this doesn't quite fit what we're trying to do. The way that they apply is they just go on our website, and there's an application link. There's a heading there. I think it's called, I'll pull it up real fast, but I think it says athletes off the top of my head. But then
I think there was a tab for athletes, for gyms, and for
yeah, for the applicant, I think it says apply
ambassadors, yeah.
now. Yeah, so they apply, and then that output goes to Keely, our athlete coordinator, and then she follows up with them to get their documents, and they make a 60-second video that talks about why they'd like to be a scholarship athlete, what they think they will gain from the practice. And then she is the first line approval authority for stuff. And then when there's something that doesn't fit the criteria, then the board takes a look at it too.
And then obviously you guys need fundraising and stuff like that. What kind of fundraisers do you guys currently do? And if somebody wanted to help, how could they go about that?
Well, I know for general donations, there's
there's a donate button.
there's obviously a donate button right on the website. So
yep. So that's the easiest way is to go on the website and hit donate now. It's pretty it jumps up at you. So if as soon as you get on the website, and that's the easiest way to do it. A lot of our partner gyms throw events for us throughout the year. We don't actually hold any of our own events. We found it makes a lot more sense and keeps costs lower for us. We don't have to assume that administrative burden. So we become the beneficiary of another organization's event. Memorial Day and Veterans Day, we do open mats a lot, and then we usually tie in something else like a ruck or some other kind of activity, Murph type stuff. And this year for Memorial Day, we've partnered with another organization called Carry the Load. And Carry the Load is a national nonprofit that seeks to support and bolster other veterans nonprofits. And they have organizations they partner with, and then depending on how that partnership goes, out of those, they then choose beneficiaries. And the beneficiaries get extra money or extra funds from Carry the Load. So we were chosen this year to be one of their partners. What that means is there's a series of rallies going around the country, starting on the 28th, which is, was that Thursday? I think it starts in Seattle. And what they're doing at these rallies all throughout the country is they're going to march basically from point A to point B, and then pick up another group of people, point A to point B. And there's going to be places where they get on a van and, drive to the next big city. They're going to go from different points in the country all the way to Dallas. So that Memorial Day weekend, they're going to have their huge rally there. So I'm in Minnesota going to do on May 7th. That's the one that starts the Midwest. I'm going to bring a team of people, and we're fundraising, taking, doing Facebook fundraisers and things like that to go participate in this rally in Minneapolis. And then from there, that the Carry the Load group is going to continue on to the next city. The more people that we bring in to participate, to register through our page on their website, and the more donations we bring in through that page, we then compete with the other nonprofits. And at the end of the year, Carry the Load looks at all that and selects several for next year to become beneficiaries of Carry the Load. So that's one thing we're doing for Memorial Day. The other side of that is we're going to do our open mats like we always do. So we ask all of our training facilities to consider putting on an open mat sometime during or close to Memorial Day, a couple weeks out there. So here in Minneapolis, we'll probably get like 4 or 5 of our gyms, putting them all at different times. And each gym runs it on their own way, however they want to do it. It can be a seminar, open mat, whatever they want to do. In fact, one of the jiu-jitsu places up here is actually going to do a 5K. So they wanted to do something different than just an open mat, because you do a 5K, you can bring your friends that don't do jiu-jitsu. So there's really cool ways to reach out beyond just jiu-jitsu circles too. And we really rely on our gym partners and our ambassadors to creatively come up with those sort of events, and then to execute them and make us the beneficiary of it. That's the main model now. The original model was seminars that the board did, and things grew so fast that the seminars couldn't fund the demand and the need. So that's why they brought in ambassadors, and we started using this model very successfully. And now we've got enough of an operational history that we can go out and look for big grants. And that was a new thing that happened to us last year. Was we got awarded the VA Adaptive Sports Grant, which allowed us to put a number of new athletes through. But then they also are funding a symposium that's actually coming up for us this week. We're bringing in about 20 people to help us create, the intent is to create a deliverable that we can then put in it. Hey, here's how we want our gyms to support our athletes. Here's what veterans need. Once we produce that, we're going to send it all to our partner gyms so that we can, instead of just taking a veteran and putting them in a gym like the original model was, we're creating this group identity. We're creating our own organic team. We've got these mentors now. We're going to try to do, see if we can help the gyms or support the gyms and the culture that the gym has. Tell them what we'd like to see culture-wise too. That'll support our guys our men and women as best as possible, to continue to create this we defy identity. And the VA is paying for us to do this symposium through this grant.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So that's kind of the next, I think the next tier up is we're kind of hitting the point now where we can realistically go after larger grants and potential federal funding or corporate funding to reach more veterans, to sponsor more people.
Nice.
And then of course with that we need more and more volunteers and more help to handle the logistics. It's kind of funny because one part of the group grows and then the other part grows. So how do you keep it all growing together so that nothing outpaces? I mean, we're not a business, but that's a business activity.
Right.
How do you keep it all growing together and feeding the right parts while you're keeping the other, you're maybe reeling this part in a little bit before it gets too big for the other parts. So it's really fun. It's really exciting. And I never dreamed that 3 years ago, this would be how I would be spending my time.
Right. Well, definitely as new members of the group, I mean, we're definitely excited to, we've always been very connected. We think martial arts generally should be connected to its community. We think, I mean, that's really kind of how martial arts historically, it's a very grassroots type of system. The way everything is tied together. There's everybody here that's I mean, we actually have people starting to come in, getting ready to train. I mean, these are all people from our community that when we're at the grocery store, so these people that we train with, I mean, are not just customers. I mean, they're not just supporting the business. I mean, this is our community. When we see them grow, we see our community grow, so now, with us being members of this community, we're very excited to see that growth within there as well. We've always believed that what we do goes well beyond just the mats, and the like. So we're happy and proud to be part of it, and we're definitely looking forward to hopefully representing everything really well out here. Now we got to start planning some open mats for.
I know. I got to talk to Olivia about the statewide, see if we can put out a donation.
We also run another organization that's ours called Pretty Dangerous. It is about women's jiu-jitsu. It's all free when we do events, things of that nature. We never the ladies never get charged for anything. So we run that. We travel all over Central and North Florida. And we have another group that we partner up with periodically down in South Florida called the Jiu-Jitsu Gypsies, where this weekend we get together once a year. We call it the statewide
Florida statewide women's event. And we get like hundreds of girls that come in.
Oh, cool.
And it's through events like this that we originally met Gina.
Yeah.
Was originally doing events like this, like Girls and Geese or Pretty Dangerous or Jiu-Jitsu Gypsies. And so now I think we've done coming up on about 100 events here in Florida, and I don't even know how many miles we've put on our.
A lot.
But it's every time we do it, it's always, that's one of our stipulations. It's everything is volunteer, everything is donation based, everything is free. We don't have a nonprofit status, but we don't charge anybody anything, and actually we don't even take donations. We get everybody it's more time based, and everything else, and trying to spread the word of jiu-jitsu and its benefits to a lot of different people. With We Defy, we're looking forward to, like I said, to everything else. If you ever get a chance and you're ever in Florida,
Come on now.
Yeah, no, I will.
Daytona's only
Yeah.
about 20 minutes away, maybe 15 minutes away. And Orlando from us, the
40
Orlando
minutes.
airport's only about a little
45
over a half hour, about 40
Okay.
minutes away. So if you ever get a chance and you're out here, we'd love to have you come by. I doubt I'll
That
be
sounds awesome.
yeah,
Minnesota, anytime soon.
Yeah, I get it. Nice. It's nice here for about 3 months a year. So
We're looking at a 90 degree day today.
wow. Yeah, I drove my kid to school today, and I thought, it was 70 about a week ago, and now it's down at 35 again. Like,
Oh,
maybe in May it'll get better.
no, I've turned into a full-on Florida girl. I like it hot.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you need to do any shout outs, if you have anything else you want to add, this is your time.
Well, I want to say thank you guys for having me on and for being a part of this organization. I know you guys are going to do great things. I can already tell. I know just by your community involvement now, and I believe very strongly that 1 + 1 = 3, and that's kind of We Defy's modus operandi as well. We don't really compete with other groups because if we can support each other, that's what we try to do. The whole point is to make the world better.
Yeah.
And it's not about us. It's about the people we're trying to serve. And, we do it through jujitsu. We have other organizations that we're close with that have other ways to do it. And if we're all doing that together, then I think we're winning. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on, man.
I really enjoyed meeting you and getting a chance to get to know you.
Thanks.
So hopefully we'll talk again.
No, I'm sure we will.
Yes, sir.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.